Megan Hicks of I Run Far. I'm with Jim Walmsley. It's a couple days before the 2024 UTMB. Here we are again, Jim.
Yeah, welcome back to France, but I guess usually, or the past couple years, it would be welcome, but I just arrived about a month ago. So yeah, we're both back in France and doing it again.
It was just 9 weeks ago that we saw you at the finish line of Western States. Talk us through the last 9 weeks. You've had a lot going on. You've came to Silverton, you hung out in the San Juans in Colorado, and then you came back and reassimilated to France.
Yeah, part of the idea was we wanted to step back, go back to Flagstaff, kind of reassess and absorb like France, our stay in France, our living in Ardèche, just kind of analyze more and more what we want to do, where we want to spend our time, like kind of going forward, and just be patient about an entire process. And I think a lot of that goes to knowing we need to go back home to Flagstaff to kind of reflect. And with that became, well, what's the race season going to look like? And then that went to, well, I'd like to do an early season race, and then we'll be at altitude, we'll be back in Flag. Yeah, the opportunity to do Western States again comes up with that, and then obviously I guess last year, even foresight of all of this happening in September, so having to qualify for Western States, and then talking Simon Gosselin into qualifying as well, and then like, hey, Western States is a good idea, come to Flagstaff, and then
just bringing your French friends to Flagstaff.
Yeah, exactly. So we had little France in Flagstaff for a while, and yeah, really good training process. I'd say like caught a few months of being healthy, consistent, kind of vanilla, boring, rinse and repeat
as you want
training.
It to
be. Yeah, just about perfect, I guess, when you look at it that way, where in years past maybe I looked at perfect training as like not only rinse and repeat and boring, but also big, fast, testing yourself with long runs, testing yourself with short runs, and
testing yourself a lot.
Yeah. And it just kind of goes to a bit tiring. And yeah, but then Western States ended up going really well. Things kind of checked out, but I think I didn't end up racing earlier in the year. So in some ways, I felt like a lot of rust was busted on that race, and kind of the recovery from Western States was not ideal, and had a few injuries, like not injuries, but like things like hurting from the race just days after, and like, oh, well, I want to pay attention to this and that, but more or less just kind of had lingering inflammation that became a problem just to get back into things. And yeah, so it's been a big reminder in the last 9 weeks of why Western States and UTMB, the two of them, have always been a challenge for me, and why in 2021 essentially just mid-race, running out of energy, being over it, and saying, screw it, like I'm gonna go focus my time and energy at one race at a time, and step back from the race in 2021 and say, all right, I'm gonna focus on this race in 2022, 2023, and we'll see how that goes. So now I guess I'm removed away from that enough to try it again, and quickly reminded that it's not easy, it's not perfect, and it is what it is, and it's interesting. Like it kind of almost makes me sad in some ways of the number of times I've put a foot forward coming right off of Western States, and not having like just a reset build and a good foundation to go into such a race like UTMB and against so many competitors, and like this is your representation in Europe, is this, whereas flip it the other way of like, yeah, we've seen lots of people struggle with coming right back from Western States, and it's not uncommon, and yeah, I go through it too.
It's interesting for me to hear you sort of reflect back to, like, in the past you tried to put two and two kind of opposites together, Western States, UTMB in one summer, and then you said, you know what, I'm gonna focus on one and then the other, but now it's kind of coming full circle of like, okay, here's the next challenge of, can I put these two kind of different 100-milers together in a short period of time?
Yeah, well, 2019, I didn't run. I took the opportunity instead to try Sierra and Ultravossen kind of back to back, and that was its own interesting challenge. But that was one of the years that like Francois and Killian or Xavier didn't win, of like one of those rare moments. And then you're like, man, that could have been like basically a missed opportunity of just not putting your name in the hat. And then even 2022, 2023, I'm not at Western States, and it's just, yeah, it's hard to choose one or the other. And then this year it was just like, well, let's do both. Like I miss not being on the line for both, but then it's just interesting trying the second one.
Yeah.
And just sequentially in the calendar, UTMB second, depending how you look at it.
So connect the dots a little bit, sort of recovery and training wise over the last 9 weeks between Western States and UTMB. A little bit of recovery. You said there were a few niggles to monitor. We know you were out training near where we live in the San Juan Mountains of Colorado, and then you've been here for a month or so. Yeah,
so I guess Western States kind of presented, and just being back in Flagstaff, and then we've always gone out to Hard Rock to, like, people ask me about that race. I'm like, well, I always have just been cheering here since 2015, and it's like, I really enjoyed training here and cheering, and why do I want to change that routine? But this year was an opportunity to go camping in the San Juans and reflect again on like the things we're missing of like our normal, or what became our normal routine for quite a few years in the US. And I hadn't been back to Hard Rock the last 2 years being in France, so it was interesting. It was nice, good. Like, I mean, I really like the disconnect going from Western States and then just out of cell service in Colorado. I like that move. Yeah, so it was an opportunity just to kind of like get back into trying our routine that we used to do, and now I get to kind of come here at the race and reflect on how that process has been, how it's set me up, or even potentially like held me back this year or years past, and this or that. And I think just kind of goes like, it's probably not the ideal calendar of like schedule what you want to do in between the two races. But it's your schedule, right? Yeah. I'm in control of it. Yeah. This is your deal. But right? Like, I guess like many of us, I'm a big fan, and like I love this sport and I love running in the mountains. So yeah, there's the race side, but there's also a human side where you need to fill up your own cup, and exactly. And like I take a lot away from being out in the mountains and disconnected from cell service and discovering new trails and stuff. So yeah, I guess that's why what I meant about that was that like it feels like watching you have like several different mountain homes, or like geographic homes at this point, and it feels like you sort of have to check in with those just to like get what you are needing out of your spaces. Yeah, I mean, we definitely missed the high altitude of Colorado, and even in general, like here in France, we missed the lung burning climbs. Instead, you replace it with just absolutely leg burning climbs, and it's just a bit different sensation, but it's also interesting to reflect on like how it's affected racing, and more or less. I mean, when I was living full-time in Flagstaff, I think I have lots of friends that would probably attest that no way I was going to sleep at sea level. Like, no way I'll drive down to Phoenix and I'll drive back up in the same day. Like, I'm not going to do it. And now I've had to kind of accept not being like quote unquote the high altitude athlete, but it was also a big adjustment going back to Flagstaff and trying to sleep more normally back at home in Flagstaff, and it being different, and then also seeing results like be pretty good and feel like I'm improving on climbing and steeper things while I'm here, and I'm not at that, like, just it forces you to take a different perspective of like, well, why is it working then? Is it needed? Is this that? Like, what are the factors that are making for the improvements? And probably those factors are shifting because like your career continues to evolve, and you're putting more miles in the bank and more miles in all these different types of terrain, and your body is just uptaking all that stuff a little bit differently, isn't it? Yeah. I think for this double, I've thought a lot about, I guess obviously Courtney's done some good doubles, but then even I live very close to Rob Carr in Flagstaff, and I had a few conversations with him, and him discussing the year he did Western States, Leadville, Run Rabbit, and like one of the best triples ever done. And
ooh, good point. Good memory there. I like that.
But I remember discussing with him and just the lack of anything he did in between the races, and
interesting.
And just kind of drawing on it's okay to rest right now, like in between the two races. And although it's 9 weeks, so maybe it stretches like what either of them kind of did, the gap between the two. I just know in years past I've always done a little bit too much and felt fatigue. So yeah, if anything, it has been different. Each ultra ends up kind of being unique, and so yeah, the cards that I have in my hand this year are different, but also I wouldn't be lining up if I didn't think I had a chance to compete up front and compete. And even then, now looking at things I've never done, I haven't finished both races. So that's like one of those, like, you can go down the checklist of what you want to do here, and it kind of falls to that of like I've tried it many times and I still haven't done both, or finished both. So even that one's still on the board to get some positive points.
I feel like, you've been at this race many times. You've had various levels of success. You had, of course, your best success last year, winning, setting a course record despite it being a very evolving course. You must have a different perspective on your approach to it this year, because you've already met that like high level goal you had for yourself last year. Where has sort of your mindset been in like the motivation, the drive to come and do this again?
Well, I think after last year, there were a lot of questions of what do you do next and this and that. And I think when you have the opportunity to be on top of the sport for even a glimpse of a moment, like the more I reflected on that of like, well, that doesn't last long. You don't know how long. And like the reflection kind of went like, well, I got to try to compete to stay at the top. And like, so then it turned into, well, yeah, like when people are in a sport and they win a championship, what do they want to do the next season? Like, you finally won the championship, and like, well, let's build to try to do it again. And so that kind of became the theme and goal. But at the same time, now going through the process and doing the 2 races, or not yet, but doing Western States and coming off the recovery and like ups and downs with that, kind of goes to, it's not the build from last year. I need to accept with like where I'm at. I don't have a fully focused training block towards UTMB this year. So it's a different hand I have this year.
It's interesting to hear you say that, because you said the same thing for Western States, that your build for that one was evolved compared to your prior Westerns from just a few limitations going on.
I mean, even
lots
like
of things
this,
work for you.
Lots of things popped up this winter, and I think that kind of goes to figuring out how you can train with what's going on, little injuries, little niggles, where you are, whether you're taking vacation, whether you're in San Juan's, whether you're at the beach, making the most of like what you're able to train with, and just being effective with that scenario. So, and then just listening to how to best set you up to try to show up healthy and give yourself a chance, because if you're on the line, that's where it all starts. So you got to get there first.
Last question for you. For me, watching you be here over the years, like, people's relationship with you have evolved, right? Like, maybe there was this air of American skepticism, but now I feel like there are multiple countries and multiple communities who sort of like claim you and get behind you and sort of boost you. That change, like, I see it, I feel it. Do you feel it? And what is it like for you?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. I think UTMB, at least like living in France, people here were absolutely stoked for me, and that means a lot. And then, I mean, it was months before I went back to the U.S., and then it was like I went back to the U.S. and I just had people, it's just like, it is home in Flagstaff, and like it is nice. And Yeah, it's interesting. I'm just really fortunate to like build communities and have people cheer for me, and yeah, I feel like all I can do back is just give my best foot forward, try my hardest, and keep working hard, and like people latch onto that, and we can all relate with hard work, and that's kind of what we can control in some ways.
Yeah.
So and even just maybe that's just the American ethos in some ways of like, we have some power to try a little harder, and, which is sometimes good and bad. I think when I reflect on like being in Europe and then looking at more US stuff going on, it's like, well, maybe it would be better to take a step back or to do a little different terrain or a different sport and this and that. And like earlier in my career, coming more from just a runner track background, this and that, and like, it's like, no, like East Africans, they run year round, they don't do skiing, like no way. And then like traditionally 90s running in the US, this and that, like speed workouts, and then look at 70s, volume based,
Yeah.
we're back to a little bit of volume based, this or that. And yeah, I don't know, it kind of just goes to, there's many different ways to prepare, and each way doesn't even have to be the same for one athlete year to year. So I think I'm learning that, and makes it more interesting and stuff. But yeah, it's been interesting.
Well, best of luck to you. I think there is no doubt to any of us that you will be putting your best foot forward. That's what Jim Walmsley does. So best of luck to you in doing that this weekend.
Thanks so much. Yeah, good to see you here again, and looking forward to everybody out on the course. Yeah, it'll be crazy, just like every year.
It will be crazy.
Yeah.